Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert suffered another finger injury. How concerned should you be about his long-term value? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Magdziuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. You can check out her work at Behind the Steel Curtain and Pro Football Focus. On today's show, it's our Panic Meter Monday. We're going to be talking about Justin Herbert, Davante Adams, and Stefon Diggs. But before we do that, Kate, we have to talk about our little bit of bet that we made on Friday. If you listen to the Commotion segment, you and I went differing ways on the Chiefs running backs. You went with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I went with Jerick McKinnon. I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I am.
You went out here. You got the touchdown. You won, Marcus. And
that's the only
I don't know
reason
what I really should have evened things
does.
out. I really should have evened things out though and said like full PPR or half PPR at least just to give myself a chance. But of course, you win. I lose. What is my punishment?
I get to pick your Twitter profile picture for a day.
Oh no. All right.
Just for a single day.
All right, everybody. All of our everydayers, you're gonna have to, I guess, go follow me on Twitter here at Kate Magdziuk to see what Marcus picked. I don't know. Let's say that'll go up for the entirety of Tuesday's day.
I like it. All right, let's get to some commotion. Let's start with Justin Herbert, who, had another really tough outing this week. The Chargers are a mess. They scored 6 points last week against the Patriots. They scored 7 points this week against the Broncos. Justin Herbert injured his finger, but even before he injured his finger, Kate, 9 of 17 for 96 yards in the interception, was sacked 4 times. We don't have the update on how long he might be out for, but it doesn't sound great, especially with the Chargers playing this Thursday against the Raiders. Wow, what a game. How concerned are you for Herbert's long-term value?
I don't want to overreact, Marcus, because just in general, even looking at his stats from week 14, right? It played limited snaps. The completion percent was not great. Nothing was great about his stats in week 14, but per PFF, he actually had one of the highest accuracy throw ratings among all quarterbacks that have played so far in week 14, which I think is kind of astounding. You look at Quentin Johnston, who, had a better day, but the biggest and most concerning thing for Justin Herbert, right? This is his 4th season. Heading into this game, he was the overall QB 10, last season QB 11. He's had one finish as a QB 8 or better, and that was in his sophomore season, QB 2 on the year. But again, the upsides there. He's very productive. But where is the stability in this Chargers offense? Because you look at, their production this season. Obviously, the writing is on the wall for Brandon Staley. He is, Justin Herbert. He is playing with his 3rd career offensive coordinator, 2nd career head coach, about to be a 3rd. Again, we're looking at the writing on the wall. Could be a 4th offensive coordinator. Maybe we see Kellen Moore get promoted, and he's got yet another.
Highly doubt with the way things are going that Kellen Moore.
We never know. You never know. But regardless, I have to imagine there's a fourth OC in there somehow. And then you look at Keenan Allen, who we've talked about him before. He is going to be 32 next season. He's in that's the final year of his deal. You have Quentin Johnston, who plenty of plenty of upside, plenty of potential there, but not necessarily a guy that I would consider any of us would consider to be there just
Mhm.
yet. Mike Williams, 29 years old. You have, Austin Eckler, who I cannot imagine comes back in
No,
next year.
no
Like,
way.
it doesn't feel like this is, one of these offenses that you want to buy into right now because, it's not trending in the right direction, just in its entirety. Now, Justin Herbert is a very talented quarterback, but I think also we see all of these circumstances surrounding the Chargers impacting his overall ceiling. So, yeah, I'm kind of struggling with Justin Herbert, but I also you look at sort of where he falls in the rankings. Like I think for most dynasty managers, they probably fall right around like QB6 to QB8.
Yep.
I don't really know that there's anybody you could justify sliding in ahead of him in that sort of range there.
I mean, there's some there's some conversations about some of these guys, and I want to get to those in a second. But you said he's QB 10 on the season. And on the surface, that doesn't sound bad, but then you've got to remember how many quarterback injuries that we've had between Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, like Anthony Richardson. I mean, it could go on and on. We've had so many quarterback injuries where if those guys just stay somewhat healthy, we're probably looking at Herbert as QB 14, QB 15,
That's a
and that's a
great
disaster.
point. Yeah, and we had Kyler Murray, who has
Yep.
just played a few games here this season. Justin Fields, who, obviously has missed some time with a hand injury of his own. Yikes! That actually that's a sort of angle that I hadn't considered in his overall
Yep.
kind of where he ranks, but it's brutal.
Yeah, let's go through some quarterbacks because I feel like the top 5 or so are pretty well established in some order. Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. I feel like those are the 5 that are consistently going to go ahead of Justin Herbert. And then it gets really interesting. You and I were having a talk pre-show about would you rather have Herbert or Trevor Lawrence? And we kind of both landed on we'd rather have Trevor Lawrence really because of the rushing upside.
Yeah, rushing upside, and then also you kind of look at the trajectory of the teams, Marcus. Like you look at the Jaguars, still a relatively young team with I think a lot still ahead of it. It's fairly easy to sort of project the overall trajectory of that team, maybe outside of Calvin Ridley, but you don't really need Calvin Ridley, I don't
No.
think. Like there's some really talented assets here. In Jacksonville, you've got the young quarter. Like everything feels like it's trending in a more positive direction. Also, let's talk about CJ Stroud. You mentioned him before the show.
I don't think
Before
this
we
was
start,
close. It's Stroud for me.
and that in and of itself is absolutely crazy. So let's look at some recent trades, courtesy of Dynasty League Football. Joe Burrow, a 2024 third, a 2026 first round pick for Justin Herbert. Like, even if I guess it's hard to compare that because Justin Herbert, his health status is,
Yep.
but even last week, like, even if you are in a win now window, like that's a really hard trade for me to say no to.
I've got one more that's going to be wild for you. If you are the Brock Purdy dynasty owner, are you trading Brock Purdy right now for Justin Herbert?
Straight up.
Straight up.
I don't think you need to, because I still think Justin Herbert has that value, but
There's no way.
like
If you're in a dynasty and you're somewhat competing right now, you're in the playoffs and the Herbert owner comes to you and says, "Hey, I'll give you Herbert for Purdy." There's no way that you're accepting it. And that's not to say that Herbert doesn't have more dynasty value because I think he does. But that's kind of where we're at right now with him, where that's a question that you can throw in it out and it's not ridiculous.
yeah, and I mean, again, you look at like circumstances and you think, okay, I'm in a win now window. Like if that's the kind of move that's going to put you in a contending spot, it doesn't sound as crazy, which
No,
again just brings us to where we're at with
who has more value over the next 2 years, between this year and next year? It's Purdy, right? He's got more weapons. It's in Kyle Shanahan's offense. I think there's just way more stability.
yeah, which that's crazy. But you know what? Like I do think in the last month or so, Brock Purdy's answered a lot of questions that
Yeah,
I had about his playmaking ability. You saw, especially in Week 14, his ability to throw down the field.
it's crazy.
And you're right, from a stability standpoint,
Oh yeah, because the
Brock
situation's
Purdy
the best
has
in the
that.
league. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So we're panicking a little bit about Justin Herbert and his dynasty value, but I want to talk about some receivers that are aging a little bit, still productive, but what you do with them in your dynasty leagues. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. Did the game go to timeout? Time to order in with DoorDash. Is it halftime? That's ordering time. 2-minute warning. You got it. That is your cue to order in. Whenever the game clock stops, that's the time to order in with DoorDash. Order pizza, wings, sodas, burgers, or even just buns on DoorDash and get it all delivered without missing the game. My wife and I have become big DoorDashers. We DoorDashed yesterday, got some wings for our little watch party, watching the 1 o'clock games. Absolutely fantastic from our favorite spot here, the Corner Bar and Grill. Get prepared before game day. Stock up on your favorite appetizers and order all of your tailgate gear on DoorDash, and then get ready to watch your team win. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter promo code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. Again, that's 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter promo code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Show. We want to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We wanted to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Okay, let's talk about Davante Adams. I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but the Raiders did not score. And in fact, they weren't even really close to scoring in this game. It's a disaster in Las Vegas right now. Now, Adams did have 7 catches for 53 yards. He had a long of 24 that came on the final play of the game. Otherwise, he did absolutely nothing. Davante's not a spring chicken. He's a little bit older. What are you doing with Davante in your dynasty leagues?
Yeah, we're just about a week out from Davante Adams's 31st birthday. So happy birthday, Davante Adams.
As you say
Obviously
that,
it's
I just remembered that I'm 32 and 31 years old. It's really not that old, but
yeah,
yeah,
not a
in
spring
NFL
chicken,
years,
Marcus.
yeah, in
You're not a
NFL,
spring
it's
chicken.
weird.
It is weird. But like you look at the situationally, right? Like Davante Adams, you mentioned, not a spring chicken, about to turn 31 years old, which isn't like a death notice for wide receivers at this point. Like I still think he's got plenty of, juice left in the tank. But the question comes with, what can the Raiders realistically do with this contract? Because if he's with the Raiders, Marcus, I'm 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 concerned, to say the very least. I'm concerned. Now, you look at Davante Adams's contract, right? Heading into 2024, uh, his contract carries over $40 million in dead cap,
I know.
which means you look at situationally, and you cannot imagine that the Raiders are eh, like, it doesn't seem like they're going to be in a position to move on, even if Davante Adams wants to move on. So, what do they do? Do you like, as a managing editor for the Raiders Wire? I want to know your thoughts on the Raiders specifically, because it's not about Davante Adams for me. I think he could be a very fine asset, especially, given his current price tag. I think Davante Adams from a dynasty perspective could be a potential value, but I don't want to invest, even despite the price. Right now he's drafted in startups, wide receiver 24. I don't mind that sort of range. Right behind him, DJ Moore. I'll take DJ Moore, but
So would I.
a lot of the players behind him, Keenan Allen, Christian Watson, like Josh
Deebo
Downs,
Samuel.
Deebo Samuel, I'll take. But most of the guys after Davante Adams, like I still want Davante Adams. So my question comes from, what do you realistically see as a range of possibilities for this Raiders team moving in the future? Because that's my biggest hesitation about investing in Davante Adams. It has nothing to do with Davante Adams.
So if he stays with the Raiders, I have no doubt that he's going to be playing with another rookie quarterback next year. I mean, the Raiders have to draft a quarterback with their first round pick. Aiden O'Connell, they selected in the 4th round. I think they believe he could be a high-end backup. He's not an NFL starter. Jimmy Garoppolo, he's not going to be their starter. He's got a lot of money tied up into him. I expect him to be back as maybe he won't be back. I don't know what's going to happen with Garoppolo. I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders just eat a bunch of his dead cap and move on. So it's
Is
not
there anybody that's thrown away more money in the last 10 years than Mark Davis?
Not that I can think of. It's a bad situation. And because of this, I don't see the Raiders holding on to Davante Adams. I think they're going to hire a new general manager. They're going to hire a new head coach and try to wipe away some of the previous regime's moves. Trade Adams for probably a 2nd round pick. Yes, you're going to eat a bunch of dead cap, but try to build up this team because they're not close to competing with Davante Adams. So if you can get some draft capital, start to rebuild the franchise, I think that's what you do. But now you're talking about Adams playing on his 3rd team in 3 years. And probably, I mean, we know where this is going. It's probably going to the Jets to be the number 2 receiver to Garrett Wilson, playing with a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. I think I'm probably more likely to sell here than to buy. If I can flip him for Deebo Samuel, I would do that. If I can flip him for, obviously DJ Moore, but I think if you're the DJ Moore manager, you're not trading Moore for Adams. If you're the Deebo Samuel manager, you're not trading Samuel for Adams either. I would be curious to see what you could actually get in a trade for Davante Adams right now.
I think that is very fair. Now, like that's the thing though, is that it all depends on the trade destination. Obviously, like the Jets are very interested in acquiring Davante Adams. What if that landing spot changed to, like, I don't know, the Kansas City Chiefs, who are in the need of a true alpha wide receiver 1? Would that, like,
Yeah, that's different. But do you think the Raiders and Mark Davis would trade him inside the
no,
division? That's
no,
the
you're right.
hard part, right? I think if they're going to move him, they would like to move him to an NFC team. But does Davante Adams want to go play in Carolina? Probably not, right? Like it's not great for Davante Adams. I still think he can be a superstar, but these seasons of him being like a top 10 wide receiver are probably over at this point.
Marcus, that's so sad.
It
Like,
is because he was awesome to start the year.
Situationally, like I mean, you're right. The range of outcomes, it just doesn't seem like the places that you would love to see him go to maintain that value are necessarily within reach.
I will say
mean,
there's one
you're right.
spot though, Kate. There is one spot that I could see him going and actually putting up decent numbers.
Okay.
Why not go back to Green Bay? Like Green Bay so desperately needs a number 1 receiver. Christian Watson, I think, has 5. I'm not exaggerating. 5 hamstring injuries since entering the league. Jaden Reed's a nice slot receiver. I don't mind Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks, but none of those guys are alpha number 1 receivers.
He
Why
knows
not?
the system.
Yeah, he knows the system. Why not go back to Green Bay and be the number 1 receiver that Jordan Love needs?
I mean, I'd kind of love that. And I think that might be the actual kind of move that would maintain his fantasy value. But I mean, you're right. Like the cards have to align just perfectly that from like a risk management standpoint with your dynasty roster, you probably are better off moving on. Now, like a couple of recent trades before we move on. James Conner and Davante Adams for Drake London and a 2024 fourth round pick. I have to imagine that especially after Drake London's career day, you're going to take the Drake London side. But
yeah, I'm a Drake London truther, so you know where I'm going there.
well, yeah, of course. Davante Adams for a second and a third round pick in 2024.
I'm probably not giving him up for that.
Okay. Well, it seems like that's like kind of the market, honestly. Deuce Vaughn and a second rounder for Davante Adams and 600 blind bidding dollars.
I'll
Fab.
take Adams because Deuce Vaughn I don't know if is ever going to have a role in the NFL. So basically, it's the second round pick.
It seems like that's the price.
Yeah. If that's the case, I probably would do it, hoping that he does land in a situation where he can be that alpha again. But I'm getting more and more pessimistic that that will be the case. Okay, let's talk about another receiver that you actually brought to my attention a couple of weeks ago, who's been slumping the last month. We will get to him next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, all you have to do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the most fun I've had playing DFS because there's so many different players and stat projections to choose from. It's absolutely incredible. Plus, PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We want to let you know that Matt and Ryan will be back on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, recapping everything from Week 14. Kate, you and I back on Friday to break down Chargers, Raiders, Thursday Night Football, baby. Cannot wait. We'll also do some commotions, so make sure you tune in for that. But I want to finish this show by talking about Stefon Diggs because you alerted me a couple weeks ago how much Diggs has struggled to produce. Okay, we had another really rough game from him on Sunday. How concerned are you about Stefon Diggs?
I am a little concerned, Marcus. It's 3 of the last 4 weeks, 35 or fewer receiving yards. 3 out of the last 4 weeks. Now, the good news is the volume's still been there, right? You look week 14, Kansas City, 11 targets. Week 13 against the Eagles, 11 targets. It's just not translating to nearly enough. Now, from a statistical standpoint, when you look at his overall efficiency, not a huge deviation from previous seasons, still averaging, 1.93 yards per route run. Not bad. 11.2 yards per reception. Average depth of target. This is the lowest it's been in his tenure with the Bills by a significant, margin. Prior to that, average depth of target, 11.8 yards, 12.2, 13.2. We had seen it on the uptick. Now we're down to 10.8. So that's definitely going to impact a little bit of your ceiling there. But I'm worried about the sort of juxtaposition between the struggles with Stefon Diggs and some of the other emerging weapons in this offense. Now, you throw in Dalton Kincaid, who has been tremendous to this point. You add back in Dawson Knox now, who's going to probably see, a portion of these end zone targets.
Mm-hmm.
All of these, in isolation, none of these things would be overly alarming for a guy of Stefon Diggs's caliber of talent. Throwing them all in the pot at once and stewing them together through the fantasy football playoffs, that worries me a little bit. And we've already seen, some discontentment from Stefon Diggs and some instabilities here in this offense. Can you trust Stefon Diggs through your fantasy football playoffs, given the situation, given,
I mean,
it's tough.
he's you probably have to start him, but no, you can't trust him. The thing for me, Kate, and his dynasty value is, do you believe he will be with the Bills in 2024? Because I do not.
I don't know, man.
It's tough because there's been so much chatter about, even his brother saying, "Hey, we need to get Diggs out of Buffalo," and some of the comments and the argument that they had on the sideline last year. I just wonder if Buffalo kind of wipes their hands clean of this situation this offseason. They move on, they draft a receiver, they sign a receiver. We could see a totally new offense with Diggs leaving. Gabe Davis is a free agent. Maybe they try to reinvent this offense. But if Diggs isn't in Buffalo, I then have to really worry about his dynasty value, because where else is he going to be attached to a top 5 quarterback that's just going to give him double-digit targets every single week?
Jordan Love.
Is that going to be the answer for everything, is Jordan Love?
Maybe. I don't. So like that's the thing is, like, again, this kind of perfect storm. And we've seen, I think, plenty of ups and downs with this whole narrative of Stefon Diggs. Like, sometimes it seems like things are fine. Sometimes things do not seem like they're fine. But it feels like the fact that we've had this conversation multiple times tells us, like, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that he absolutely will not be back, but the fact that if his brother's chirping in and, like,
I think we're trending that way.
If you're his brother and you're chirping in and you're not speaking from the source, then you're just you're being a bad bro. So yeah, I think there's definitely some smoke there. And
How about he joins his bro?
huh?
How about he joins his brother in Dallas? That'd be kind of fun.
Hey, I mean, you certainly would like that.
I mean, I hate it for Diggs' dynasty value. I'll tell you that much.
I would as well. So I mean, you look at this, he's a 30-year-old wide receiver with a lot of, I think, potential ranges of outcome. That's not to say his ceiling isn't as high as it's ever been. It's that I think the floor is lower than it's ever been, which that's kind of the kicker with his dynasty value right now, I think.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the next 4 weeks and how it plays out is going to be really important for Diggs' dynasty value. If he can manage to salvage this and have 300 yards and 3 touchdowns over the next 4 games, I don't think we're overly concerned. But if it continues on this trend, I'm going to be really worried going into the offseason. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Go check out our show on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. Check out her work at Pro Football Focus and Behind the Steel Curtain. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy your Monday. Enjoy the rest of week 14. And we will see you right back here tomorrow.